Okay, we may or may not be recording, but I hope we are, and I hope there's audio input. So this is my game against a much lower rated player. My daily's 1000. I don't usually play much against human players. I usually play against bots that are rated, anywhere from 1500. I've been playing the bot on 1500. It's pretty challenging. I lose some. I won my first game, and lately I've been on a bit of a losing streak, so I've been doing more puzzles. But anyway, let's get started with this. So, this is my game. We're going to start the main line. He played e3. So, my response to that was to move my knight over. So, I just decided that the best thing to do would be to, select that square right there and just kind of wait to see what he does. Well, his immediate response to this was to move up to here. So that was the second move, was e4. Now, according to the analysis, I should have immediately taken on e4, or alternatively played something like e5, which is oddly enough what I did, but initially told me I should have taken on that. But anyway, I played e5. Which is now what it says is the best move. But anyway, apparently this is called Avant Kourouji's opening, which I've never heard of. But anyway, I have this. He then moves his bishop out to there, to there. And then I decided to move my bishop out to e7. Now I do block my bishop in at some point. By moving, I think, this pawn up, but I was thinking about opening up lines for this bishop to come out and maybe harass, maybe this square, oops, not that arrow, this square right here, and I like to do things a little differently, so, like, I'd say more like harass this area, like, give it a little pizzazz there. So one of my pieces would be right here, and then I'd be, harassing a knight or something. I thought maybe I'd give the bishop out, but then later you'll see I decided to fianchetto. Just get that out of the way, and then, move this one up to here. But it goes in an interesting way. Now, I just want to point out that his bishop placement's a tad odd. I think he meant to go here, where his bishop would be attacking my f7 pawn. But maybe not. I don't know. Maybe this is just maybe this is some opening he studied, and that's what you're supposed to do. I'm not really sure. Maybe you're supposed to target this pawn for something. Like, you're kind of pinning the pawn to my king. That is one thing. I can't move that, but I really wasn't planning to. I mean, I like the problem with that is, even if I wanted to, the game won't let me move that. Like, I now can't. It's just you just pinned it. So I don't know. I mean, like, really, I'm not quite sure what his logic here was, but whatever. So he decided to move out knight c3. I castle, and he moves his bishop right under his knight. Now, finally, he is doing what they say to do, attack the f7 pawn. So some good development. He does know how to develop his pieces, He got that bishop out. That was good. I did this. Now, notice that does block in this bishop. This bishop does not have much to do. He sadly cannot progress over to here because of this terrible impediment. Terrible impediment. Terrible impediment. It was Pride Month, so we got to do multiple colors, man. But anyway, you see what I mean? I kind of blocked myself, but I wanted to move this knight here and kind of get a circle of defense because, we didn't have that. And I always think that's a useful way of doing things. So he moved his knight out there, and then I decided I would move my knight to here. And then he moved that knight back. I'm not quite sure what his purpose was. Maybe move down to here and try to do a knight. I don't know, because really if he took my knight, I would just recapture with... I don't know what he was thinking. If we look at this knight's range, it can move here, 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 and here. So he's kind of like protecting a pawn that doesn't seem to be protected. That's all I can think. Those are the only knight moves. But we need to look at what those knight moves have access to. So this one could have gone for that pawn or over to here. And that would have been attacking the rook. It could have gone over to here. It would have been forking the rook and the queen. So, I mean, you could have some paths if he moved it there, but I doubt that was his plan. From here, he's got this move. So, he could move here, here, here. And, yeah, threaten some stuff. But there'd be no point because... I mean, I guess taking the rook would be the best thing there. But I would... If he moved there, I would just take him with my knight immediately. Like, I wouldn't really have any hesitation. Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I would just take him with my knight and not really worry about it. So that one's kind of eliminated. Or just take him with a pawn or that. But I like to keep my pawns kind of... And I prefer to use the knight capturing that state. So anyway, I decided I would fork these two, the pawn and mainly the bishop, just to get that bishop out of my way, because it's a nuisance and it's attacking the f7 pawn. So then I put this pawn up ready to fianchetto. Then the next thing that happened was he took. And then after that, I ended up moving my bishop to b7, fianchettoing. He moved his knight back to c3, so this way. Notice I went up in like a really weird way, this way and then this way, so that's how I conceived of it, but whatever. Anyway, so I'd like to point out for future reference... Whoa, I'd like to point out this... What the hell? I would like to point out that this is defending this, and this is defending this square. Make it green. And we'll make this one blue. Just so these two squares are being defended. Why make them... These two squares are defended. That'll become relevant later. You'll see why. So I move my bishop up. He moves his pawn out. Now, my thing was, I just decided that, you know... you can turn... How do you turn one pawn into two pawns? Like, two pawns into one pawn. Or, well, three pawns into two pawns, I should say. Well, simple. You just take here. So, you take, and yeah. There's a threat, sure, but if you go forward, I just took. And then he took back using that pawn. Now, that was a dumb pawn to take with, because... that leaves his queen open. I don't know if he thought maybe I would be stupid enough to move this pawn up and then like take that pawn, but I'm not that dumb because they even get to take. Well, I mean, actually, maybe I would because he might be dumb enough to try to take my knight, and then I would get his queen. So that's one thing to consider. But anyway, I moved my pawn up here and took, and you know, so hopefully he does take because. Maybe, you know, he might have been thinking that if his queen takes, that he's good and everything. But what happens next is kind of interesting. So, I take that pawn, and then he moves his bishop there, attacking the... so his bishop is attacking this pawn. And I wasn't too worried about it. So I moved my pawn up, and if you're wondering why, it's both defended by this knight, and it attacks this knight. So this knight's going to have to move to here. Now, interesting part about that is, I forced him to move to a place that's attacking my bishop. So, it's kind of weird, but you'll see how that works out. So I move my queen there, noticing that he's now attacking my bishop. And then he moves his bishop there. And now that really kind of confused me, because if you look, I can just take. And so, I took. So then he took. Then I took. And so far, pretty straightforward. But then it gets confusing because he puts his bishop out there. Now, I'm no rocket scientist, but the knight can take, like, very easily. So why'd you move your bishop there? Like, what was he thinking he was attacking? He's not. He's attacking literally. Whoops. He's attacking literally nothing. There's nothing here. There's nothing here. If he stopped at this particular spot here, this green spot, he would get immediately taken by a pawn. If he stopped here at this red spot, or yellow spot, well, he would be taken by the rook. If he stopped at this blue spot, he would be taken by the queen, or the knight, or, yeah, I mean, I really don't see what the hell he moved that there for, but, again, knight can just take. So he made a severe error, and now, from here, notice that I could put him in check. That is a possibility. I could just straight put him in check right here. That's totally possible. Because if you look, that's check. So here to here, check. But the thing is, at that point, my knight's range is like this. I can go there, and I got those two squares. And then I have this square too, obviously, because that's where I came from. It always includes where you came from. And then I would also have this square as well. So we'd be able to, like that. And so, looking at this, it's like, this is blocked off by my pawn. This is blocked off by my pawn. Yeah, but you know what's not blocked off by my pawn? That square. Let me change the color here. That square. He can move to that square and be at a check. He did have to make this prophylactic move. But I'm going to clear the board and watch what he does. He moves over to there. I did not intend to check him until he did that, and then I checked him with my queen. Well, then he moved there like he wanted to take my pawn. And he does take my pawn. Don't think he doesn't, because he's a little bitch. But I put him in check first, so then he had to escape by taking my pawn. Well, I mean, really, if you look at it, how could I resist? Because from here, I have him in check again. So, that's what I did. I put him in check again. He moved there. Good job. I took his queen. Seems a little ballsy. He took with the rook, which is exactly what I wanted to do. But there's a caveat to taking with the rook. Now it's perfectly aligned with my knight. And you might get the bright idea to do this. Like, I'm going to take your knight. But that would be forgetting that this knight, they have a symbiotic relationship. You would immediately get your rook taken by my knight. Then I'd have two rooks, you'd have one. So I was hoping he'd fall for that. I move my rook there. He moves his rook and stops just short of getting in serious trouble. The next trick that I had in my book was, so we're in the e-file now. We can move rook e5, check. Which you might wonder, couldn't he take? No, because this knight defends. So, needless to say, he moves up, thinking he's safe. But at that point, I just did the smart thing that all of you are probably thinking, which is this. Rook e4, check. And same reason. The knight is defending this, so he cannot take. So he moves back down one. Now, I figured it was a good idea because if you notice, although this rook is still defended by this knight, there's a bit of a problem that I have with that. I wanted to move this knight up here, and you'll see why. So that it also defends this rook. Because there's a cool endgame that I got to using this strategy. I don't know why, I just felt like this was a good idea, and it turned out to be a good idea. So, he moves king to f5, and then I moved my knight to c5. For some reason, it's saying c5, but I feel like that's actually c6. Yeah, it's saying that's c5. Oh no, yeah, this is c6. This is c5. Yeah, my knight is c5. And notice that this pawn defends, so it's an outpost. So there's no way to kick that off of there, unless you wanted to lose like. Because okay, so if you moved your if you did somehow take with like a rook or something, you would have just basically you would be down the exchange definitely because rooks are 5 and knights are 3, bishops are worth. It's argued 3. I don't think they're exactly equal to knights because if you can open up lines, the bishops are able to go down. Huge like. For example, a bishop would be able to navigate this huge diagonal and then threaten this rook, and that would be very useful if he still had a bishop. I don't think he does, but yeah, he definitely doesn't. You can just look at the board until that. So now watch how the rest of the game goes. I move that there. Now that's an interesting choice. So he decides to line his rooks up. Well, I decided to do something very interesting. You might think this is insane, but I did this. Threatening his rook. Because I knew what he would do. He would be like, oh fuck, he's going to take my rook. And guess what? If I had taken that rook, think about it. It comes with check. So he would have had to move again. And also, this rook is preventing the king's motion. And also, it's defended by this knight. And, like, just the fact that comes with check would mean he'd have to move out of the way somewhere uncomfortable. But just watch how this goes next. So he decides he's going to do this and moves rook down. So I don't know what else I would have done in this situation other than rook takes d8, and then of course he's gonna take back. But then this is the funny part. Look where his king is. See this pawn right here? Now my king is defending these 2 pawns actually, so they're good. This pawn can move up. And it'll check the king. Interesting, right? Notice that this knight also has this square controlled and this square controlled. This knight has this square controlled and this square controlled. This rook has all of the, like, basically everything controlled. So it's just this big wall of shit. Now, in this big wall, it's really bad for this guy because my king also prevents him from moving in any of the places, even if diagonals open up. So watch what happens next. Check with the pawn. I just really want just check with the pawn. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. Pawn attacks the king. This pawn attacks the king. So, what would be the king's best move? It says king to g5 would have been the best move. King to g5 would have been the best move. So, here. Not king to g5 right there. So, he moves there. But I would like to point something out. It's the machine is detecting it. Mate in 2. There's another way you could do it. You could do F6 and then check him. I did not go that way. You can also go knight to e6, check, which is what I did. So, needless to say, I went knight to e6. King doesn't have that many places to go, man. It's mate in 1. He only has one place to go, which is h6. Whoops, h6 right here. Because it's just too powerful, man. These pawns are controlling these 2 areas. Like I said, the rook controls all of this. He can move here, but then he cannot. He can't move down to here because you can't be right next to a king. And well, I don't think he can move here. Oh yeah, I definitely couldn't move here because the knight's controlling that area, so he can't move in any of the red I marked. So he's screwed. So he has to move to h6, and then it's mate in one, rook to h4, and we're done. And that's how I won that game. It was a really interesting game. I've made notes of what I could have done better. One of the alternate lines here was so you have like so we start at this, and we have this the situation where he goes e4. They say at this point that I should have done knight takes e4. That was one of the recommendations I got. I haven't put it in chess base. My computer's a lot stronger than their engine and gives me a lot better, more sensible stuff. I could have done that, and I would have had a lot more in the enemy camp. But I just don't see much purpose in playing like that. Let's just play some natural, normal chess. So this is the game. This is how it went in fast motion. Kick this bishop away and put my bishop at fianchetto. He moved his knight there. I moved my bishop there. He moved that out. I took and gave him double pawns, really opening up the center. I put my pawn up there. He took it. I took. He then moved that there. I then made his knight move over to a place where it could take my bishop because I kind of wanted him to. And then he moved his bishop there. I seriously wonder if he realized that this, like, if he just didn't see that or what. But I remember when I would do things like that. And then he takes, I take, and then he did the same thing again. I don't know why, but I don't know if he had some kind of strategy. But then I checked and check, and then takes. Stops just short of his rook being taken for nothing. Then I put him in check. He thinks he's safe. Check. He doesn't seem to understand how knights move, I guess. So then I put my knight up here, and then he moves. He lines up rooks. So basically, his plan was to go like from here to here, line up the rooks, and do I don't know what. So when I saw that, I decided I would launch an attack on his rook. Like so. So just basically to illustrate, there we go. He decided to get out of the way, which was dumb because that's kind of what I wanted him to do. I wanted to take this rook right here and take that. And that's what I did. So look at that. He takes, I check, knight, and then rook over, checkmate. And I think this is one of the weirdest checkmates I've ever seen. I really like it. You know, it's pretty cool. I think even though this was played by two amateurs, I'm trying to get better and I'm trying to become like, you know, a skilled player that actually has something to show for it. I've beaten 1500 or I came really close and then I did blunder something, so I restarted the game at the right when I made my queen. I managed to promote a pawn to a queen, and then I made several variations of the game where I checkmate them in various ways. So I count that as a win. It was my first game against a 1500 opponent, and I can beat 1000 level bots pretty damn easily. I don't know where I stand. I don't take ratings. Ratings are everything. Just practice the game and get better at it. That's my only message, and I hope you enjoyed this, man. So, yeah.